Hi everyone, so we had another Diablo 4 developer interview. I already made a video about the one with Rax, and there was some pretty juicy stuff in there, like SSF is coming, and they were talking about loot filters and skill tree update with major changes and some stuff like that. And now we got the interview with Rob here, which was much more focused on the actual live game and the upcoming patch in Season 11. And there were some pretty interesting little details that he has managed to extract from the devs. I have this TLDR post here on Twitter, so you can go check that out. I also have one from the Rax interview or my video. You can go look at those in the description. But let's go through this. I'm just going to give you a quick TLDR because this is like a 1.5 hour video. So let's start here. So we're talking about mostly Season 11 stuff and stuff that is not yet announced with like new patch notes or something. So we're starting with campaign. This was the first question. Is it okay that campaign is like the best way to level? It's very fast on the PTR. It's like an hour if you really try, and maybe 2 hours if you're kind of chilling. And they said that they kind of are okay with that. I'm not sure if they're really aware of how fast it is, but they said they rather want to buff other stuff. So they know maybe make Helltide more appealing and faster and stuff like that. So overall leveling can be expected to be very short, is the takeaway here, I think. Long and boring boss fights. They said that they want to up the difficulty rather and maybe shorter. Also on the PTR, for example, in the tower, the bosses were bugged. So apparently that was a thing, and they were like way too tanky. They were like giga tanky, especially if you compare it to like the pit, for example. I did a lot of testing there, and it was always like double or maybe triple as tanky or so in the tower, so it was ridiculous, and that is coming down. But yeah, they generally want to make them less tanky across the board, so we'll see. Itemization, so they mentioned that CTR is now an affix that can roll on gloves and rings and has similar weighting to other affixes like crit, so it's going to be much more common, much more easily to get, and you can get on more pieces, so this is pretty good, and it's going to bring back a lot of the kind of like feels good man progression as you go up in like, you know, higher gear levels and so on, because cooldown is just always is a nice affix for almost every build, so that's kind of nice. And they also have plans for like more stuff down the line. I guess it will be expansion. Attack speed, Rob asked about the 2 caps. A lot of people are not really aware of how they work and what goes into which cap and so on. So they said, yeah, they don't like the way this system works at all. So maybe you're gonna see a removal of that, or maybe even a removal of attack speed caps altogether, because they said it's capped to the fun. Then we're talking about Sanctification. This is the new feature, the Season 11 theme, or part of it at least, where it's basically like a Varlock from PoE. You can gamble on your item and either like make it better or not. And that's kind of the last step, and then the item becomes unmodifiable. So there's lots of pretty crazy outcomes. And they talked about, you know, they want to make more diversity in gearing so that not everyone just has exactly the same stuff in every slot, because it's somewhat unpredictable unless you try it, you know, many times. But I want to give you like a way to kind of like use all the item copies that you get, and maybe potentially make one of the not so good ones better than maybe another one, for example. So that's kind of the idea. And yeah, they want to make it so that it doesn't feel necessary, so they kind of kept it somewhat tame, they said. But they also like made it sure that you can now no longer brick your items, at least the really high-end items, like for example mythics. So they specifically mentioned that, for example, the bad outcomes are removed for those, or maybe occur at a much lower rate. To be honest, that was not really a problem in the first place. The chance to make the item worse was like 10%, and then there was like maybe a chance to not really get anything, but at least the item didn't like get destroyed or something like that. And so I felt like this was a relatively minor thing here, but I guess people like this. Like indestructible is now no longer an option. They apparently make it always an upgrade. And yeah, I guess it's just a thing that you're gonna do no matter what, kind of. For toughness, they talked about why they did this. So mostly because yeah, damage reduction was very conditional. Lots of like, you know, random paragon effects, passives, and so on that were like sprinkled in across the classes, and you never really had an idea of how much damage you would take. I can definitely understand that sentiment, and I was also not a fan of how defenses worked before, and toughness would hopefully make this a bit more streamlined. And also they said that they want to have like a more straightforward progression system, like so not just your damage goes up, but also your toughness goes up to kind of keep pace with what the monsters are doing. They were talking about attack power, so that is getting removed apparently, and now they're just putting their weapon damage, which is also not exactly a very like useful metric, I guess, because realistically, once you get to max level, you always have exactly the same value there. But who knows, maybe there's gonna be other adjustments, or, you know, there's like aspects on the Spiritborn, like annealing hits, that actually modifies your weapon damage. So maybe there could be some more stuff like that in the future, but for now this is what we got here. Personally, I would also like to see, for example, maximum health displayed again, or maybe we could choose a few stats that we can display or something like that. That would be kind of cool. Anyway, monster damage. So they said it was very high on the PTR. The scaling is down a little bit, and also the monster HP a little bit. So this is mentioned somewhere else. So it's going to be like a bit more smoothed out between Torment 1 and 4, so it's not so punishing. But then the damage will keep scaling all the way, even beyond Pit 100 or Tower 100, which was previously not the case. So it's going to get harder and harder at the high end, but I don't really expect that defense is not going to be the bottleneck. So this is at least not what we have seen on the PTR. It is getting tough, but usually you outscale the monsters. Then we have elite affixes. So they said that, okay, sometimes you just get a combination of crazy stuff that you can't deal with, and that's okay. Personally, I'm also okay with that. I think that kind of adds to the fun of like making a good choice sometimes. For the tower, there was a lot of stuff here, so we're getting a lot of interesting news here on the tower. So first of all, they mentioned like how the maps are generated, and it's like very different. They build everything from scratch in the back end, and they have like a whole new algorithm and stuff like that. For example, the maps always go up, they never go like down or something like that. So you always like, you know, see the most with this isometric view, for example. Dead ends are small and predictable, and they don't really have like anything important in them, so you don't really miss something juicy or so. But it should also be like part of the challenge here, that you kind of know the maps a little bit, so they will have their own little rules, and that will help you to navigate them better. But generally, we definitely noticed on the PTR that the tower was very straightforward. You can't really get lost there. You can't really run into a dead end for like half a minute and then return around like in the pit or something. And they actually said that eventually they hope that they will backport most of the stuff into the pit as well to like make the map generation better and more interesting, for example. And then for the future, after Season 11, so they said that leaderboards will show the build regardless of profile private setting. There will be tower rewards at certain tiers, like a one-time thing that you just unlock as you go up. So this is kind of to challenge yourself and, you know, progress your character, for example. And then there will be leaderboard rewards with like a certain cycle. So they mentioned like maybe 1 or 2 weeks. Similar to Gauntlet, I think that was also weekly. So there's going to be a kind of like a locked-in leaderboard and then a reset. And there's going to be the prestige titles that look different and have some sort of, I don't know, you know, distinction. And then halos for the top placements. So that sounds kind of cool as well. And the interesting part here, this is bound to the character that gets the thing. So you can't use this on your entire account. So only the character that has achieved that rank can actually wear this reward, which is kind of interesting, especially on hardcore. I think it's going to be very fun, and I'm kind of excited for that, I gotta say. There's also going to be rank pop-up toast, similar to like D3 when you complete the run, and then, you know, boom, rank 200 in like 7 minutes on tier 90 or something like that. So this was completely missing right now, but this is also planned. And then we also have the pit here. So yeah, they mentioned, okay, this is the tower stuff is coming into the pit as well. Also, Belial Eyes will auto-activate, so they didn't like that we have to click them. I was also very annoyed by this, I gotta say. No ovals and low XP was a bug, so I guess we're still gonna farm Pit as the primary XP source in late game. And also like a relatively good gearing tool, but I expect we're gonna see less Pit running, because after you level your glyphs, you can now also get XP in other places. So they have generally like changed XP scaling across the board, and it's going to be a bit more streamlined. So it's not just the pit, hopefully. And they also mentioned that, you know, why do we have pit and tower? They're very similar right now. That seems to be mostly the starting point, and they want to make the pit a lot more interesting, a lot more like all over the place, a lot more maybe customizable, and so on. So they want to put like crazy stuff in there. And this is why, you know, we have the tower as the, you know, kind of a competitive, like very streamlined feature, and the pit where they can do anything they want. So that's why they split those two things. Okay, for challenge and rewards, so they talked about torment tiers. There's like these large gaps, like, you know, there's like insane jumps between torment tiers. I think it's something like times 10 monster HP or so per torment tier, which is pretty ridiculous. So torment 4 is literally 1,000 times harder than torment 1 right now. And they have this case sometimes where, okay, a build can do T3 too easy, but T4 you can't do it at all. And so you're kind of like stuck in this weird space where, you know, you kind of like, you know, the game becomes super trivial until you can reach that next step, and then becomes super hard suddenly, right? So they want to like smooth it out more, and potentially add more torments to smooth this. And yeah, for now they also have no solution for like just go fast to be more efficient. So they mentioned that they want to give us other ways to like make the character more efficient without just going faster, but right now there's no immediate solution at least. So speed is everything kind of. Then we have class balance. So on the PTR, everything kind of went down a lot because they like took out a lot of the power, the chaos perks, chaos items. They were really strong. They also like nerfed some stuff. So try to bring everything a bit more down to earth, but they also lowered the pit scaling now compared to the PTR. So everything will get 5 to 10 tiers mag, which means we're suddenly gonna see plenty of builds going into like 100, even 110 range or so on the pit again. And I guess it's going to be still like a relatively diverse meta after all. Not as diverse as in Season 10, I guess, because you also had like Season 10 only builds to the chaos stuff. But it should be fine at least. And I expect there's going to be some other like class-specific updates, build-specific buffs, and so on also coming to try to bring this more in line. Yeah, and they talked about the philosophy. So they don't like power for power's sake. So they talked about passives in the skill tree, and they also mentioned in the other interview that there is going to be a major skill tree update coming. And for example, yeah, just passives give you like more numbers, and that's it. And they don't really do anything interesting almost all the time. So they don't really like that. So maybe you're gonna see some shake up there. And then also they like big chunky bonuses that you can feel. So when you do like an offensive aspect versus defensive aspect on your gear or something like that, you can feel that. It's a choice, and they want to do more stuff like that. They talked about Sorc Teleport nerfs and speed farming. So they mentioned that, okay, Sorc get a new unique. I tried that on a PTR, and Sorc is in fact the fastest class and has basically the best speed farming build. At least one of them, and I expect we're gonna see some buffs that probably bring some other builds more in line, at least with that. So yeah, I don't really think there's so much wrong here with the Sorcs. They definitely needed a bit of like a nerf with the teleports, but it's not like bad at all. So I think that's just gonna be fine, guys. Yeah, and then also what I mentioned earlier with the difficulty scanning. Okay, Melted Heart, that was an interesting topic. So they did mention that they reworked that item again. So on the PTR, what happened is that it allowed you to have like thousands or dozens of thousands of maximum resource, which broke a few things, like, you know, stuff that spends all of your resources to deal more damage, or stuff that scales with your maximum resources. There was like Ramradni, Hoda, stuff like that, for example, that was uncapped and just gave you like a 20 pit tier buff or so for no reason, basically. They kept everything to make sure that kind of Melted Heart doesn't break the game, but I forgot a few things like that. And we kind of expected they would just cap the rest and that's it. But in fact, they're actually uncapping everything again, but now reworking Selig, so they don't have to warp the entire game around it. So instead, now it just doubles your maximum resources, but they made this like energy shield a lot more powerful so that it spends less resources and still has the same effect of like protecting you with your resources, but it doesn't just like, you know, destroying the entire balance of all of these resources effects. And this means that everything can be as it was with like, you know, spending or gaining in full maximum resources all the time. So like Death Trap Rogues, for example, or something like that, really relied on these things. And so it's going to be kind of like a similar game as before. And Selig may or may not be used in some builds now. So I'm not really sure, you know, maybe they change the stats as well, and we have to see how exactly it will work. There might be a few builds that want to run Selig as an actual offensive item, but I guess it remains to be seen. For now, I'm not that hopeful outside of maybe like maximum a handful builds or something. Snapshotting. So if you don't know what snapshotting is, it basically means you benefit from a specific effect for an extended time when you use it only once. So for example, a provocation passive on a druid gives you like a guaranteed overpower on the next cast. And then you can use Cataclysm to snapshot that effect into the entire Cataclysm for like 20 seconds. And every tick of that Cataclysm will be an overpower. So that is like one of those cases. And they mentioned they want to move more away from that and towards duration buffs and remove the feels bad man moments. Because, for example, this Cataclysm, if you don't hit the overpower, then your Cataclysm is just gonna do nothing for like next 20 seconds and you're gonna feel really bad. And that kind of sucks. Okay, and I talked about Chaos Powers and Chaos Rifts. So some may come back, some people that, the stuff that people really liked, like the Raven's Power, for example, I guess. That is like one of those candidates, and we'll see. Chaos Rifts as well, people really like them and they also understand that. So they're gonna just check how they can fit them in. But yeah, I think this is like a no-brainer for my side. So I was kind of surprised to see that it's not already staying in the game, but it's going to come, I guess. A sell all button is not planned. In fact, they want to make sure that you just get enough gold from playing the game. There's also like more gold drops they added. No plans for trading currently, no plans for a DPS meter, but I hope that the tower can kind of provide that. Boss mods, they did mention that they might do something like make them like a material. So they will go into a material tab, they don't clutter your inventory, but they will also not be trainable anymore. So this is something that they were like at least like kind of toying with. Clan features, nothing for now, but they will see, maybe there's going to be more. Support builds, it sounds like they want to go in that direction, so they like it and they want to do more. And I mean, we already have support druid, which is like a pretty meta thing, and then you have support barb, which is kind of a thing. So we'll see, there might be some more action. Rebirth function, so people really like that from Diablo 3. This is a feature where you don't have to delete your character at the start of a season, but you can rebirth it. It becomes level 1, a seasonal character, but it keeps the name and the transmog, or like the character like customization basically, and all that kind of stuff. And I guess in the terms of the like tower rewards, like halos, titles, and so on, this could be very interesting to kind of keep a character, you know, throughout the seasons with that title, with that halo that he got from the tower or something. So I think this would maybe go hand in hand with such a feature. And lastly, they talked about the future. So number one, there is a very long development ahead for Diablo 4. So it's just like for the people that, you know, kind of feel like, okay, where are we going? Well, I expect a few more expansions at the very least for like the next half decade plus. And then they mentioned Game Awards, 11th of December, which is only 2 days after the season launch. And they were kind of like joking around and then saying, okay, everyone is a gamer, everyone should be watching Game Awards. And yeah, it might be a bit of a tease that something is coming there. So we'll see. But yeah, we're definitely going to check that out when the time comes. And that's it. So this was the Rob interview here. I also have the link for the full VOD. You can go check that out. Check it in the description. Otherwise, yeah, this was the like last interview that we have so far. That was also the Duck interview, like it's like a Korean streamer. I did not actually watch that. I will just see if I can find some summary on that as well, because it was, you know, like a very different setting, and I didn't actually get to see that live. So we'll see. Otherwise, I think we got some pretty interesting like little tidbits here in this interview, especially regarding the upcoming season. So this was a lot more in-depth than the Rax interview, for example, which was a lot more like about the basics and the general ideas and so on. Rob is obviously like blasting the game a lot more. So he was trying to like find like these little details, and that actually went pretty well. But yeah, we had like 2 really good interviews at least. And well, now it's kind of like wait and see until the patch notes drop, which is going to be like in 3 weeks from now or so. So stay tuned for that. Until then, I'll be cooking and like preparing builds and whatever. And then when the time comes, we're going to be blasting the season. So hope you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.